Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this new episode. I absolutely wanted to create this episode this week because I have two clients that I'm working with right now, and they both were coaching on the same thing. Both of them started a new job at the beginning of the month, and both of them have a coworker where there's a lot of ambiguity around if, like, who does what and why is she here and am I the boss or she's the boss. So I wanted to talk to you specifically today about navigating that ambiguity because things are fuzzy and that's pretty normal nowadays. And so let me elaborate the situation a little bit, and then I'm going to give you 5 different ways to reframe how you can think about this situation. And the reason why I also wanted to talk about it today is because it uses up so much brain energy. If you are in this situation, I want you to use your brain energy to focus on being successful and focusing on things that matter in your first month or your first 90 days. So let me talk about one client. I'm going to call her Amina. Okay, so Amina, she just stepped into a new VP role. So big job, lots of responsibility, and I would say relatively clear mandate. Okay, relatively. But on day 1, she realized that there's somebody else. And it's not a direct report. It's not her boss. It's somebody who's also senior, so similar level. They've both got a similar scope in the department. But she was told, so my client was told that she was more senior and that she was coming in to be promoted in a year. But still, nobody really explained the reporting lines and nobody really clarified how their roles fit together. So suddenly she's thinking, wait, are we peers? Am I her boss? Am I stepping on her toes? Is she leading? Am I supposed to do that? And it wasn't that anybody did anything wrong. It's just that the situation wasn't clarified, neither by HR, her boss. And so with my client, doubt starts to creep in. So instead of, and this happened with both of the clients that I mentioned in the introduction, is that instead of like hitting the ground running, they're just bogged down by all these questions. So watching her step, second guessing herself. But first of all, I want to reassure you that this happens all the time. And in senior positions, a little bit of tough love, but it's completely normal. The dynamics are not clear. And in today's world, things move fast. But the danger here is that instead of you focusing on what you were hired to do, you get caught up in what other people are doing. That is the danger. So I would like to pause and reframe this. And I want to offer you today 5 different ways that you can look at this situation, because how you interpret what's happening, that is what is going to shape the decisions you make, how you lead, how you show up. So it's not about choosing who is right, who is wrong. It's not about blaming the company and blaming your boss, but it's about choosing a lens and a perspective that's helping you move forward rather than staying stuck. So the first reframe, I call it focus is power. So when things are unclear, like your brain wants to fill in the gaps, and it usually fills them in with threats. In this case, comparison, and insecurity and thoughts like, I'm not sure what I own here. Maybe she is more senior. Maybe I should step back. Please don't do that. You were not hired to figure out somebody else's job. You were hired to deliver on yours. So when my client and I spoke, we looked at what her onboarding brief was, her goals, and the job that she was brought in to do. Was it 100% clear? No, but she also knew that she was going into that kind of situation. So the question here is, what are the outcomes? A question that I'm asking you also, if you are in this situation, what are the outcomes that have your name on them? And so once she got clear on that, it changed completely how she spent her time. So she stopped hesitating, and we coached around where should she be spending her time on what, and what does she say no to? The second reframe is that leadership and titles, they aren't granted. Leadership is modeled. And what I mean by that is, yes, there's a lot of hope and a lot of expectation that the company is going to say, here's your new VP. She's in charge. Okay, we would all love for things to be like that, but it doesn't happen like that. And that is very rare, especially when the organization is messy or moving fast. So, and keep in mind, this is really important, is that people don't follow titles. You could have the biggest title in the world, and if there's no respect, if there's no presence, then people aren't going to follow you. So think about how you speak, how you carry yourself, whether you sound grounded or unsure. Do you own the room, or are you being overly pushy and insecure? So in this case with my client, we coached around where she could show up in her power, whether it be in specific meetings, making smart calls, and not being aggressive about it, but just being clear. Okay. The third reframe is, please don't take on ambiguity that isn't yours. And this is where I see a lot of clients overfunction, meaning they're trying to overcompensate and fix everything. Because when something's unclear, especially women, we try to fix it. We want to define both roles. We want to check in with everyone. We want to bring people together. Okay, sometimes that is needed, but it is often also a distraction. Okay, you were not hired to fix the org chart. You were hired for a specific mission, a specific outcome. So instead of asking, how do I fix this? Ask yourself, how do I do my job well within the parameters that are given to me? So don't carry things or try to fix things that aren't yours to carry. My fourth reframe is that ambiguity is just part of the job nowadays. And if you are in a senior position, there's no playbook. Nobody is going to hand you a color-coded chart of how everything works, at least in most companies. And you're expected to lead through the gray. Okay, that's what we do. We, as senior leaders, we manage problems. We move things forward. We make decisions without all of the answers. Take action even when things are unclear and even when the structure is still shifting. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's not a sign that you're doing things wrong. It's a sign that you're actually in the right place. Companies and teams thrive when they see a senior leader functioning in a clear, calm, level-headed way in the middle of the ambiguity. Okay. So ask yourself, what can I move forward on this week? And then do it. So that means, what can you control? What is in your lane? And you might need to explain some things. You might need to bring some people along, but just don't wait for perfect clarity, because I was the CEO. I worked in corporate for almost 30 years. Clarity doesn't show up very often. And if it does, it doesn't stay very long. So just accept that ambiguity is part of the job. And my fifth reframe is that influence beats turf. And what I mean by that is, when it's unclear about who owns what, who's responsible for what, is it me, is it her, who's supposed to take this on, the instinct is defensive. The instinct is to protect your space, stake your claim, draw the line. But today, when things are so collaborative, that often backfires. Okay, maybe 30 years ago, when people respected all of the titles and the hierarchy, maybe that worked. But now it often backfires. So, the person across from you, they might be just as unsure as you, and they're probably not trying to steal anything from you. They're trying to survive too. It is simply a survival instinct to want to protect your turf. But instead of turning it into a power struggle, which is often a silent power struggle, and it takes up a lot of brain energy, which I'm trying to get you to avoid. I want you to spend your time on things that matter. Okay, that's what I coach so much on, is getting out of the drama and get into your power and focus on what you can focus on and what you can control. So you can, in this situation, collaborate with boundaries. You can be generous without having to shrink back, or without that affecting you negatively. And so that's what we coached around, is how can you work with this person or not, depending on the circumstance, depending on, where you need to collaborate, so you can still own your role fully without competing. And I'd like to leave you with just some coaching questions to think about. So if you are in a role right now where things are fuzzy, first of all, it's normal. Okay, accept that that's the reality. Ask yourself, question number 1, what am I here to deliver on? Question number 2, where am I waiting for someone else to go first? Okay, please don't ask for permission, just move. Number 3, how can I show up with executive presence and leadership presence, even if the org chart or even if the company isn't perfect? You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to constantly prove yourself. Just focus on what you can control and on what your mission is. That is what real executive leadership looks like. So you were hired or promoted for a reason. And the way you navigate uncertainty, that's what people are going to remember. They're not going to remember if you had all the answers. They're not going to remember what your title was and what your colleague's title was. They're going to remember whether you owned your voice, trusted your judgment, and showed up like that job was yours. So I'll see you next week. Have a fabulous week, everyone. And if this resonated, please drop me a note.